Hi, everybody, and welcome to Creativity Reframed. In our exploration of all things creativity through times of crisis, we have got some incredible female leaders that are joining me in this series to talk about really what the female leadership perspective brings to that lens, and also really what the role of innovation and problem solving is that sits alongside that creativity. I'm absolutely delighted to have a really wonderful, very, very bright lady and somebody who is a truly empathetic leader that I've always looked up to joining me today. I have the wonderful Cammie Dunaway, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Duolingo, who is here to give her perspective. So Cammie, welcome. Absolute pleasure to have you here with me today.
Oh, Dawn, it is so great to see you and spend time with you. And this is a really fun topic. So I look forward to getting into it.
Absolutely. So, as is our way, we'll kind of dive straight in. So the question I ask everybody first up, Cammie, is over the last 18 months of all of this change and transformation, how has it impacted you, both as a female business leader and on a personal level?
Wow, great question. And in some ways, I would say the business side of life has sped up and the personal side of life slowed down. And, we found ourselves at Duolingo, like all businesses, just faced with a situation where a lot of our plans that we had very carefully laid out, we had the beautiful year-long marketing calendar. And then in March, in lockdown, all of a sudden, all that went out the window. And so it forced us to really develop an ability to be much more agile about understanding where consumers were at, understanding how our brand could help solve needs, and coming up with programs and solutions kind of on the fly. And we were fortunate in that the language learning business, and Duolingo specifically, did quite well during COVID. I think people were looking for something in life that they could feel like they had a little bit of control over. And so maybe learning a bit of French or learning a bit of Spanish was something that people could do at home, that they felt good about. But so many of our plans had to be scrapped. For example, we were getting ready for an in real life event that we had been doing called DuoCon, where we would physically bring language lovers from around the world around to talk about language and technology and popular culture. And we had to completely scrap that and go to a digital event, which caused a lot of sleepless nights. But in the end meant that instead of reaching a few hundred people, we were able to reach 100,000 people virtually. And, so just learning how to be responsive and agile and, kind of throwing those year-long calendars out the window, I think it was a positive thing on the business side.
Sure.
And then on the personal side, I just found that a lot of those almost routine social activities, when they went away, life got a little bit slower on the weekends. And I found that I had some more margin in my life. I actually realized that, a Friday evening cooking dinner with my husband and watching Netflix is kind of wonderful. Started spending a lot more time in nature, walking, because that felt like one thing that I could do to get out of the house. And so slowing down on the personal side turned out to be a good thing, and something that I hope I can preserve a little bit of.
For
now
sure.
we move back into our more normal routines.
It was interesting when you were talking there, Cammie, about that, when you were talking about that sense of almost on an anthropological level, that during the pandemic, that notion of people feeling that there's still stuff that they can control and that one can grow and still learn and all the rest of it, again, is such a kind of, is a positive outcome, I guess, isn't it? That, when there isn't much you can do, you can still use your brain and you can still learn, right?
Absolutely. And we have to.
And I guess just to kind of maybe double down a little bit on you in terms of, you know, your own kind of leadership style, Cammie, what do you think you've been able to do personally, or kind of through your team in terms of, you know, again, using that creativity and problem solving to, you know, what new things have you tried or experimented with over the last 18 months?
Yeah. So, as you know, like creativity, ideation, insights is the lifeblood of marketing.
Yeah,
And I think marketers by nature are pretty relational creatures. We
yeah,
really like to brainstorm. We like to just collaborate on programs. And I had relied, I've got a team that's spread out all over the world, and I had relied on bringing them physically together 4 times a year. All of a sudden, that's not possible.
mm-hmm.
But we found that we were still able and actually needed more than ever to collaborate.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started doing even more regular brainstorms. We just did them virtually. And we figured out how to structure them by using breakout rooms and by using various digital tools
Yeah,
that still enabled everybody to kind
yeah,
of contribute to that. We also found that we had to be a little more creative about the way that we kept each other informed about activities. And we use Slack at Duolingo.
yeah,
And so simple things that we hadn't done before, like every Monday morning, everybody on the team posts a little bit about what they did over the weekend. And then they post what we call our MITs, most important things,
yeah.
that we have coming up during the week.
Mm-hmm.
And, just getting into that rhythm of sharing in a way that is visible to everybody on the team, that then
Yeah.
people can look at that and say, oh, that's what you're up to. Well, I did something last year that might help out with that.
Yes.
So really leaning into digital communication and
Yeah.
collaboration tools
Yeah.
has just been essential. And we're going to keep all those rhythms, even as we start to get back to more in-person sharing.
For sure. It's really interesting, actually. I think in a similar vein, we did some work, and typically it would be your classic brainstorm where you have the marketing team in the room and you it was a session around purpose and values and brand DNA and all of that stuff. And this was just as COVID had started. And again, a little bit like what you were saying, we were like, how the hell are we going to do this now? What actually, again, if necessity is the mother of invention, right? So it kind of forced us to approach it in a completely different way. The particular challenge that we were working on, we brought in their whole organization over a certain number of days and brought them into little shorter workshops.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit like what you were talking about, when you talked about when you had to move your in real life event to the digital event, I think also the benefit of the digital tools is it can be quite democratizing as well, can't it? In terms of you can actually bring in different voices to perhaps the usual voices, because normally the room would dictate, oh, there's only a certain amount of people that are going to be in the room, which is quite interesting, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. One of the things that I have always loved to do is to really encourage my teams to be students of great marketing.
Yeah.
And have in the past, maybe once during the year, twice during the year, asked someone to come in and speak at an offsite. And all of a sudden I realized, like, wow, through Zoom, we can have speakers every month.
Yes.
And
yes.
So that's something that we did. We had David Rubin from the New York Times. We had the woman who leads a company called Nextdoor, a company here that's taken off called Nugs, that is a animal-based chicken product. We had these people come on and just speak for 30 minutes, answer questions. And I had never thought about having a speaker through Zoom, and it opened up a lot of new possibilities for inspiration.
Yeah, no, for sure. And are there any female leaders out there, Cammie? And of course, there are some very well documented ones. I was just interested from your perspective, is there anyone in particular as a kind of female leader in whatever guise actually that has really kind of caught your attention?
I will tell you honestly, Dawn, the females that I am most inspired by these days are the young people, the young female leaders on my team.
Yeah.
I had a really interesting experience maybe 2 years ago, right before COVID. I went back to my university and I minored in women's studies, graduated in 1984. And back in 1984, you know, you were really taught as a woman how to adapt your style to be successful in more of a traditional male-dominated business environment.
Yep.
And I went back to speak to this group of women's studies majors who are, graduating now in 2019, I guess it was. And they were all about, we're not going to adapt to the culture.
Yep.
We are going to change the culture.
Yep.
And I was so inspired by that because I do think female leaders bring qualities of empathy and different ways of communicating and making decisions that the business world needs. And I love the fact that these young leaders were determined to have their voices heard rather than to change their voices.
It's such an interesting point, isn't it? I think the whole kind of generation that are coming through are so, in some respects, they're very brave, very bold, very activist. And I think it is the challenge, I think, for brands and employers of, it's not about how one fits into a culture. I think it's about how cultures and organizations make sense of this kind of wonderfully eclectic group of people that you've got working for them. They're so empowered, which is wonderful to see.
I also love, I've got a wonderful marketing team here at Duolingo, and many of them are pretty young, which I think as a marketer, it's really important to have those young voices in your team. And, I see some of the marketers here, male and female, but just doing some really brave and creative things that excite me a lot.
Sure. And I guess thinking about brands then, Cammie, are there any, because I think one of the things that's been very interesting, of course, during all of this has been certain brands, certain organizations being so truly purposeful. There's obviously a whole side conversation around the degree to which people are woke washing and all the rest of it. But if we maybe kind of focus on the ones that we think actually on perhaps a much bigger level than just acting as a brand, but as a, almost a citizen within society, are there any brands that you kind of have kind of looked at and thought they've done some really powerful work during COVID?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a brand here that people wouldn't know because it's a local brand. I'm in Pittsburgh, called Highmark Health, that really did a lot to celebrate their nursing staff. And they actually worked with Marvel and produced a comic book about their heroic, these superheroes that were serving during COVID. And I think that, the brands who did it well were the ones that kept it authentic to who they are, to what their business is, as opposed to just trying to produce a pretty television commercial with, lots of emotional messaging.
For sure. I can't believe, was that an actual partnership with Marvel that they had?
It was, yeah.
It's incredible. I mean, first play to Marvel as well, to I guess have such grassroots activity that they can do some of them smaller, kind of more regional initiatives as well, which is great. And I guess the final question, Cammie, which I ask everyone, is in light of everything and where we're at the moment, what are your hopes for us all as some version of normal comes in, whenever that might be?
Yeah, I think that we all discovered that we are maybe a little bit more resilient than we thought we were. We all discovered that we need connections with each other, and particularly the connections that give us joy and help us to be our best, and that we may have to work a little bit harder to maintain them. Whether it's doing Zooms or whether it's, just being purposeful about putting up your most important things every Monday morning. But I hope that we will retain those kind of those lessons of COVID, that we're stronger than we think, but that we need each other more than we know.
I know, and it is interesting, isn't it? Because I know we've talked quite a lot about kind of the role of digital and technology and all the rest of it, but again, I think it's the balance between the two, isn't it? Which is the essential bit of, I think it's kind of really shone a light into humanity and what that looks like. And then almost like the role of technology as an enabler, I think, around us. But as you say, the beating heart of it is all about that resilience and connection, really. So, and as we discussed prior to actually starting filming, Cammie, again, we probably would have been having this conversation until COVID, in the sense of, you know, everybody being so globally connected now, using these wonderful tools. So with that lovely note in mind, Cammie, I will bid you farewell. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will look forward to catching up with you soon.